At WWDC 2024, Apple announced Apple Intelligence, their new AI system that promises to make your devices smarter, more personalized, and more useful than ever before. But what exactly is Apple Intelligence? What does it mean for you and I? And how does it fit into everything we're seeing in the AI space? This is episode 421 of the Learning with Leslie podcast, and let's do it. This episode is brought to you by Ecamm Live. I'm going to tell you a little more about them later on in the show. All right, we got to do it. We got to talk about WWDC and Apple Intelligence. I spent yesterday watching that, so now you don't have to watch it. You're going to get all of the highlights specifically as it relates to their AI efforts. They made a bunch of announcements, but we're going to focus exclusively on AI. So before we do that, what is WWDC, right? That's their annual developer conference where they talk about all of their upcoming software and technologies and all of that good stuff. So they spent the first half talking about all of their OSs, right? Vision OS, iOS, Mac OS, Watch OS. Did I miss anything? iPad OS, TV OS, all of the OSs. And they announced a bunch of stuff that's coming to these devices that's going to make it very interesting. I'm not going to spend a bunch of time I'm not going to spend any time focusing on that. I'm going to talk specifically about the second half of the event, which was all about AI. It was focused on the AI capabilities, and they're calling it Apple Intelligence. Now, it's just like Apple to do that, right? They take AI and they make it like rebranded for Apple. So what we're seeing is, and even before we get specifically into Apple Intelligence, what we're seeing is that AI is becoming a huge deal, and it's so much a part of the conversation right now because you have all of the tech giants like OpenAI, Google, Microsoft, and now Apple really trying to make some really significant moves when it comes to artificial intelligence. Ever since the launch of ChatGPT about a year and a half ago and the rapid adoption of ChatGPT, everyone is trying to win. It's interesting to see the perspective that Apple is bringing to this, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to make AI more personal and also privacy focused. They spent a lot of time talking about privacy, and we're going to dig into it. Basically, by the end of this episode, I want you to fully understand what they had to say and what they announced where AI is concerned. Now, if you think about a service like ChatGPT, ChatGPT is very helpful. Why is it very helpful? It's very helpful because it has been trained on a bunch of content, and it's able to generate new content based on prompts that you give it. It's able to give you suggestions and inputs and help you to process things and all that good stuff. There's a lot that it's able to do based on the data that it's been trained on. However, ChatGPT doesn't know me. It doesn't know the conversations that I'm having. It doesn't know what I have to do on my calendar today. And Apple is in a very unique position to bring a more personalized approach to it, because what they're able to do, or at least what they're attempting to do, is leverage your personal data while protecting privacy. We're going to get more into how they are protecting privacy a little later on in the episode. But in terms of making it more personal, here's what it's seeking to do. If you have apps on your phone, which you do if you have a smartphone in 2024, you have a bunch of different apps. You have a mail app, you have an app for sending messages, or multiple apps for sending messages. You have a calendar app. You have a bunch of apps for different purposes. Now, the Apple Intelligence is not a new app. What it is a way of integrating intelligence directly into your Apple device at the level of the operating system, which makes it possible for it to do some very interesting and unique things. So it's deeply integrated into your iPhone, your iPad, and your Mac, not as a separate app, but as a way of baking intelligence capabilities directly into the operating system. All right. So what does that mean, right? What it means is that it can kind of work seamlessly in the background, integrating with all of these different systems to help you out with everyday tasks in a more personalized way. All right. So what do I mean by that? Well, it has your personal context, and because it, can see the messages that you've sent, the messages that you've received, it can see what's on your calendar, it can see what you're up to, and it's understanding data from across different apps, photos, messages, calendars, etc. It can provide now like the Chat GPT type experience, but tailored to your situation so that the recommendations and the actions that it's able to suggest and even do are based on you. That is a very interesting, way to approach AI, because the personal context makes the AI more useful. It makes it more relevant to your specific needs. Now, here's the key thing. And this is what I'm seeing from a lot of the announcements that we're seeing recently, whether it's from Microsoft or Google, or now in this case, Apple. The processing is happening directly on your device, or at least the majority of the processing happens directly on your device. And it can analyze your personal data. This is the goal. It's analyzing your personal data without collecting your personal data. And because it's happening directly on your phone or your computer or your iPad, and it's not sending that data to the cloud, there's a level of privacy and security that's built in. It basically ensures that your personal data remains private, and it's not collected and sent to Apple. It's not collected and sent to anyone. That, to me, is very fascinating. We'll talk more about the privacy aspect a little later, but it's very fascinating to have this stuff working directly on my device. Now, let's talk about some of the techie stuff, right? It's made up of 3 components, and this I have to give credit to MKBHD. I watched a video where he broke this down, and it just kind of makes sense. Okay, so the components are, number 1, you have the large language models, and this is Apple's own large language model. I'll explain that in a second. It also has diffusion models, and it has a semantic index. Now, what in the world does all of that mean? Well, a large language model is something like ChatGPT, right? It's trained on a ridiculous, amount of text data. And because of how it's been trained on this data, it allows for natural language understanding and also generation. It's kind of like this. Have you ever had like a ridiculously smart friend who has like read every single book in the world? Or at least it seems like he's read every single book in the world. He or she has read every book. But not just that, they have like a photographic memory. It's the kind of person that if you're on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and you can call a friend, this is the friend you're going to call because he's consumed all the information. And not only has he consumed all the information, he can recall the information and just spit it up to you so that you can win that $1 million. This is what a large language model is like. So Apple has developed their own language model. The next aspect, number 2, is diffusion model. Now, this is a technique that's used now for creating images, and it allows for the creation of custom visuals. Now, I remember I used to teach biology, And when I used to teach biology, there was a section where we spoke about diffusion. And with diffusion, you have a situation where you have some substance that is at a high concentration, and it's going to go from a high concentration to a low concentration. And I remember the example that I used to use when I was teaching is, let's say we're in the class right now, and someone in the back corner, they fart. All right. When they fart, there's a high concentration of, let's call it fart molecules behind them. And it's going to start to spread. It's going to go from a high concentration to the areas in a room where there's a lower concentration. And it's just going to go from high to low. All of a sudden, the people around them are smelling it. All of a sudden, everyone in the room is smelling it, but it diffuses out until eventually the molecules are evenly dispersed and we're not really smelling it anymore. All right? What does that have to do with AI? And why did I think about this example? Anyhow, it's a similar concept, right? With diffusion models, what you have is a high degree of noise. All right, you have let's think about it as particles, right? You have all these particles and there's a high degree of noise. And as it diffuses out, you get lower levels of noise and lower levels of noise to where things start to become visible. You're able to start identifying objects. It's kind of like why when you go and you make an AI image in a service like Midjourney, it kind of starts vague, and then you start seeing some clarity, and then you start seeing some clarity, and all of a sudden you see this full image. It starts with high degree of noise, and then it goes to where there's a low degree of noise and more discernible objects. I don't even know if the fart example helped in this case, but the idea is this. We are generating these images using diffusion models. And lastly, there's the semantic index. Now, what is semantic index? Semantic index basically allows you to link information across all of these different apps and systems within your device. All right? This is kind of like you go to a library. A library has a ton of books. And there is a librarian there. And this librarian knows where all the books are. And they can not only tell you where the books are, but they can help to make connections between this book and that book and that book and that book. This is what the semantic index is. So it's like having a large language model, a diffusion model, and a semantic index that's all working together to make it much more personalized and much more useful. Okay, so that was like a whole lot of tech speak and all that good stuff. Why do we care? What does all of that mean for you and I? What does it allow us to do? Well, let's talk about some of the things that it allows us to do. Well, number one, when it comes to anything related to language and writing, we have now tools that allow us, like with ChatGPT, to write, to rewrite, to proofread, to summarize text. All of that stuff, it can help you to, if you're working on an article or you're working on a script for a video, you're working on a marketing plan or whatever the case might be, it can help you to refine your writing by suggesting whether it's alternate phrases, whether it's fixing your grammar, your spelling, or extracting key points. It's basically doing what things like ChatGPT have shown us that they are really good at doing. Yes, a lot of these features are already things that you can do on your devices, but because now it's using Apple Intelligence, it's much more intelligent. It's able to work across apps like Mail and Messages and all of the different apps that you use on your devices to just make writing much more easy. If you need to reply to an email, it can do smart replies. It can do things like prioritizing your notifications. There's so many different things that it can do, just like you're able to do with a service with like ChatGPT. Now you're able to do that natively within the device that you're using. And that is going to make the whole process of creating on your devices much easier. So there's that. Next thing, because of the diffusion models and because now we're able to create images, it allows you to do things like send custom emojis. I know that's not a big deal for most people. It's definitely not a big deal for me. But it's going to be interesting to see how we engage with each other using custom emojis. Let's say the emoji that you want to use, there's no emoji for that. You can create a custom emoji and send that to help in your communication. Another thing that all of this allows is thank you. Thank you, Apple. Finally, we'll see how well it works. But I don't know if you've noticed this, but Siri, the smart assistant, has been pretty dumb for a very long time. Now, Siri is going to be able to take advantage of Apple Intelligence, of all of the stuff that's happening now with AI capabilities on your devices, to be much smarter. And because it's using a large language model, it's going to allow you to have more natural conversations with Siri, going back and forth in more useful ways that will hopefully make Siri much more helpful. It's going to be interesting now when you can, I don't know if you've ever tried this, but when I do voice chats with ChatGPT, it's as if I'm having a conversation. Let's say I'm trying to understand something and I don't fully understand it. I will go to ChatGPT and I will turn on voice mode and I will start a conversation with it. I will ask questions. It will come back with some answers. It will ask me questions and I will do it as if I'm talking to a person. I've done an episode on this podcast where I interviewed ChatGPT and it actually went over very well. Because we're now able to leverage large language models, because it can draw on data from across apps, it is providing that more personalized experience and more accurate responses. At least that is the goal. The custom emoji thing that I spoke about, that's called Genmojis. And that is going to be very interesting to explore when that does come out. And I'm looking forward to at least trying it out. I don't know how much I'm actually going to use it, but I'm looking forward to trying it out. Another thing you can do with that is you can generate emojis in your friend's likeness. So, for example, someone's birthday, a friend of yours' birthday. You can create an image of them celebrating their birthday and send that, as opposed to those default stock birthday greetings that we send on birthdays and all that stuff. Now it can be more customized to that person's actual likeness, which is interesting. It does have some potential privacy implications there. We're going to talk more about privacy stuff in a second. But I think this is going to be a very interesting way for us to start engaging with our devices, because now you can create these images, you can create content, you can get help and all of that stuff directly on your devices, more customized to you. So that's going to be interesting to see. Now, I want to talk about the privacy stuff, because I think this is a very important distinction that we're seeing between Apple, or at least the way Apple is trying to do this, and the way many others are trying to do this. What Apple announced with their version of Apple Intelligence is that the processing, for the most part, is happening on your device. That data is not being collected. It's not collected by Apple. They have no access to it. It's running directly on your device, not on their servers. That's the first level of privacy that's happening. And what that does is it makes sure that Apple never has access to your personal data. Nobody has access to it unless you give it to them. So that's the first level. And that to me is very interesting, because with all of these other models, or at least most of these other models, if I go to ChatGPT, for example, and I am giving prompts, I'm giving information, all of that processing is happening on their servers, in their systems. In this case, it's not. It's happening on your device under your lock and key, basically. But then there's a next level. There are some things where it's a much more complex task. And for that, it needs to tap into the larger system. For those types of tasks, it does send it to the cloud, but it's sending it to what they're calling a private cloud. So that's for things that are maybe a little too intense to run locally on your device. They've built this, or they are building this special privacy preserving cloud infrastructure. And that is what is used in order to do those higher levels of processing. It is able to do that processing without exposing your data to Apple. Apple does not have an incentive to monetize that data or anything of that sort. They're not in the business of monetizing your data. They are in the business of providing you secure data. I like that. I like that because as excited as I am about artificial intelligence and large language models and services like ChatGPT and services like Claude, as excited as I am about it and I use it on a day-to-day basis, I'm also someone that is very concerned about privacy and security. It's actually the reason why I use Apple devices. I find them to be much more secure, much more private. It's the reason why I have never, ever had to deal with a virus on my device. I've never, ever had to deal with any of those things where you get someone, they open an email, and now there's all kinds of crap that's installed on your device. I've never had to deal with that experience on any of my Apple devices, and I've been using them for a very long time. I don't believe that Apple is necessarily an altruistic company that cares about me personally, but they've built their business model around privacy and security. So I trust them a little more than I would trust a Microsoft or a Google that, quite frankly, they survive by selling access to you, by selling your personal data at some level. I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong, but what they're doing does make me somewhat uncomfortable. All right? So for me, to have a company like Apple that is so privacy focused for their own reasons, because it makes them more money and they've been able to do it successfully for so long, having a company like Apple doing stuff like this, I think it's a good thing, not just for Apple users, but I think it's a good thing for the entire industry because it's going to push them to a certain extent to really consider privacy considerations that maybe they might not be as focused on because a company like Apple is doing it. I like that. I like that a lot personally. Now, I do believe that because of how heavily focused Apple is on privacy and security, I think that's going to limit and restrict to a certain extent what you're able to do using Apple Intelligence. And I think I'm okay with that. No. I am okay with that to a certain extent. It'll see how much, I'm very curious to see how much that will limit things, but I prefer to err on the side of privacy and security rather than having just everything out there. All right? That's my personal take on that. Now, there's one more aspect of this. Yes, a lot of the processing happens on device, number one. Number two, for the higher level processing that needs to happen, it can go to their private cloud. But at a level 3, they're actually working along with OpenAI and integrating with ChatGPT. So there are some things that ChatGPT is going to be better at doing, because this is all they do. This is the bulk of what they do. What Siri is going to allow you to do in this situation, what your device is going to allow you to do, if you ask it for something that it believes that ChatGPT would be better at, it can then give you the option of, it will say, hey, this query is probably better handled by ChatGPT. Would you like me to send it to ChatGPT to get a response? And then you can choose, yes, I would like you to send it to ChatGPT to get a response. First of all, I am extremely surprised that they are integrating with a third party at this level, because that is so not Apple. But they're doing it. And it's going to be interesting to see how that works. The key thing that they emphasize is when you do that, it's only going to send the data that's relevant to the query that you're making. It's not going to be sending all of your personal data. The personal data stays with you, and it will only send what you give it permission to send. Very interesting approach. And I can't wait to see how well it's implemented. So I'm looking forward to a world where I can say, hey, can you send me that? Can you remind me, what is that recipe that my friend sent me about New York cheesecakes? Somehow I always come back to New York cheesecake because it's my favorite thing to make. Or hey, what do I need to do today? And then it will go based on my calendar, also the emails that were sent, and maybe a text message where someone asked me to make sure to contact them. And they can just summarize, hey, these are the things that you need to get done. I love that kind of personalized assistance. And if our devices can get better at doing that, I think that's an amazing thing. Of course, as someone that is very much actively using services like ChatGPT and Claude, I love the fact that we can get better support and better integration with a service like ChatGPT. I love the fact that even with just my device, on my device, I can get help with some of the queries that I make to ChatGPT, but it's done in such a personalized way. I think we're at a point where things are about to get very interesting. By the way, I gotta let you know that this episode is brought to you by Ecamm Live. Ecamm Live is an all-in-one video production platform. It is what I'm using right now to produce this episode, as I switch to the different scenes, as I bring things up on the screen, as I ask you, for example, let's do this really quick. As I bring up video clips by hitting the wrong link, as I do stuff like that, but I'm able to say, hey, go ahead and subscribe to the channel right now, and I don't have to edit this in after the fact. It happens on the fly. It's a beautiful thing. Ecamm Live, it's Mac-based, so you can check them out. If you want to check them out, go on over to ecamm.com/Leslie. If you use that link and you use the promo code Leslie, that's going to save you 15% off your first payment. So make sure to check them out and go ahead and use that link. Okay, so with all of this said, what does that mean for you and I? It means that the future is going to be very interesting. It means that our devices are going to be getting more useful. The stuff that Apple announced, is it all 100% new? No. Some of these things Google has been doing for a while. I tend to think that oftentimes Apple will come with these developments later than the others, but they do it better in some ways. In some ways, they don't. But whether you are an iOS user, a Mac user, or a PC user, what we're seeing is that AI is becoming much more useful. AI is becoming a thing that it is a tool that we can use to help us be better at what we do. And I would encourage you, even if you are afraid of AI, I would encourage you to explore it a little more deeply, to see what it's really about, and to see if there are ways that it can help you to do what you do better. I've been saying for a while, and I think this might be either the next episode or let's go with it being the next episode. I'm going to record a podcast episode where I share all of the things that I am using AI to do. It is helping me to do so many things that maybe I used to do it in the past, but it used to take so much more time. It is speeding up my content creation. It is speeding up my strategic planning. It is helping me to create stuff. It's helping me as I study. If I'm doing Bible study personally, it is helping me do a better job with my Bible study. If I am doing research on a specific topic, it is helping me to do that much more efficiently, much more quickly, saving me time and saving me money. So if you are not actively using it, I want to encourage you to check it out more. But yeah, that's it. Those were the AI related or the Apple Intelligence related announcements at WWDC. And it's going to make life a little more interesting. And I like that there's more competition in the space from a big player like Apple, because that's just going to push the entire industry to be better. Number 2, to hopefully be more privacy focused. Number 3, to just create better experiences for us as the users. And as I've said before, there are concerns because now what we can do at our fingertips, like on our devices, or what we'll be able to do at a higher level on our devices is great. And it's terrible. So there are going to be people that are going to take advantage of this in negative ways. But what I want to encourage you to do is to be one of those that are going to take advantage from it in a positive way to help you do amazing things. Yeah, that's pretty much it. That's all I got for this episode. Thank you so much for joining. Like, subscribe, do all the good stuff. And until next time, take care. And God bless.